The gentle hum of the jet engines was oddly soothing as I sank into my plush first-class seat. Normally, this would be my happy place, where champagne flowed freely, where the world felt a little smaller, where I could pretend everything in my life was just as polished as my designer heels. But that day, I couldn't shake the knot tightening in my stomach. I'm Bella, the girl you see on society pages, the one with the perfect Instagram feed and the big smile that hides the truth. I wanted the world to think I had it all. Money, status, glamour, but the truth was far less glamorous. Behind the curated posts and designer labels was a woman drowning in debt, barely holding it together. I adjusted my sunglasses and reached for the champagne flute offered by the flight attendant, willing myself to relax. The familiar scent of luxury, leather, perfume, expensive cologne, usually made me feel powerful. But today it was a bitter reminder of the house of cards I was living in. And then I saw her. She was tall, her crisp uniform hugging her curves in all the right places, her hair neatly pulled back, and her name tag read Diana. Something about the way she smiled, warm, natural, the kind of smile that didn't belong in a world as cold as mine, caught me off guard. I tried not to stare, but my eyes followed her as she moved down the aisle with an effortless grace. Her hands were steady, strong and elegant as she helped a passenger lift a bag into the overhead bin. And I wondered, for just a second, what it would feel like to have those hands on me. I shook the thought away. This was neither the time nor the place for daydreams. But when Diana reached my row, my heart skipped a beat. "Can I get you anything else, ma'am?" she asked, her voice soft, low, and laced with just enough huskiness to make my stomach flip. I fumbled with my words. No, thank you. I'm fine." Her lips curved into a knowing little smile that made me feel like she could see right through me. And then, as if the universe wasn't satisfied with just a harmless crush, the plane hit a patch of turbulence. She stumbled. I reached out instinctively, my hand catching her wrist to steady her. In the chaos of the moment, her body pressed against mine. I smelled the faint citrus of her perfume, felt the warmth of her chest against my arm, saw the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. And just like that, something in me shifted. The rest of the flight was a blur of half-breaths and stolen glances. Every time she passed, I was hyper-aware of her. My champagne sat untouched. My financial documents on my tablet, the ones I should have been reviewing, felt suddenly meaningless. By the time we landed in St. Petersburg, I had made up my mind. I had to see Diana again. Over the next few days, my obsession grew. I found excuses to linger in the airline lounge, booking flights I didn't need, pretending to work just to catch a glimpse of her. It was reckless, expensive, and completely unlike me. But for the first time in months, I felt alive. And then one afternoon, fate finally threw me a bone. I saw her, still in uniform, her hair a little mussed from a long flight. And when our eyes met, she smiled. "Bella, right?" she said, her voice warm, familiar. I nodded, my heart hammering. Yes. What a surprise. We sat together. We talked. And I learned that Diana was nothing like the women in my usual social circle. She was grounded, funny, self-deprecating. She had stories about far-off cities and quirky passengers that made me laugh until my cheeks ached. And when she looked at me, really looked, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Before she left, I worked up the courage to ask, "Would you maybe like to grab coffee sometime? Outside the airport, I mean?" Her answering smile was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "I'd like that." Our first coffee date turned into 2, then into late-night texts, flirty messages, and lingering phone calls before bed. Each time we met, the pull between us grew stronger, but so did the weight of my secret. I was still juggling creditors, selling off jewelry, pretending everything was fine. And every time Diana laughed, every time she touched my hand across the table, I wondered if she'd still look at me the same way if she knew who I really was. The masquerade ball changed everything. I invited her, reckless, desperate to have her in my world, and she said yes. That night, as I slipped into my crimson gown, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I looked like a woman who had it all, but inside my heart was pounding. When Diana arrived, wearing a midnight blue gown that made her eyes seem impossibly bright, my breath caught. "You look," I whispered. "Perfect." The ball was a glittering blur of champagne and whispers. I introduced Diana as a friend, and every time I said it, it felt wrong. She was so much more than that. Later, out on the balcony under a sky full of stars, she reached up and removed my mask. "There you are," she said softly, and then she kissed me. It was gentle at first, just a press of lips, a question. Then it deepened, turned hungry, became the kind of kiss that rewrites you. My heart raced, my hands gripped her waist, and for the first time in months, I felt whole. The weeks that followed were a dream. Stolen nights, whispered confessions, the kind of intimacy that made me believe maybe, just maybe, I could still have happiness. But my debts were catching up to me. One evening, as I sat staring at yet another overdue notice, my phone buzzed. "Dinner tonight?" Diana had texted. I stared at the screen, my throat tight. How long before she saw the cracks? How long before this beautiful thing between us shattered? That night, over dinner, she told me she'd been offered a promotion, one that would take her away for longer stretches of time. "I don't know if I can take it," she admitted. "Not if it means less time with you." Her words cut me to the bone. She was willing to sacrifice her dream for me. And I was lying to her every day. That night I couldn't sleep. At dawn I did the one thing I swore I'd never do. I called my father. Within hours I was sitting in my penthouse study laying out the truth. He didn't yell, he didn't lecture. He just sighed and said, "We'll fix this. But no more secrets, Bella." And that's when I realized what I had to do. I asked Diana to meet me at a small cafe near the airport. When she arrived, her smile faltered at the look on my face. "What's wrong?" she asked. And then I told her everything. The debts, the facade, the lies. Her silence was worse than shouting. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "You didn't trust me enough to let me in. How can I believe anything we have is real?" I reached for her hand. She pulled away. "I need time," she said, and then she was gone. The days that followed were unbearable. I sold the penthouse, cut up my cards, started over. My father helped me secure a job at a small nonprofit. For the first time in my life, I was living simply. No more masks, no more parties. But without Diana, everything felt hollow. And then weeks later, my phone buzzed with a message. "Can we talk?" I don't think I breathed until I saw her walk into that cafe. She looked cautious, guarded, but when she sat down, I saw the woman I had fallen for. "I can't promise I won't mess up again," I told her, my voice shaking. "But I can promise that you'll never have to guess who I really am again." She studied me for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. "I've missed you," she whispered. I swallowed back tears. "I've missed you too." The months that followed weren't perfect. They were real. We fought, we laughed, we rebuilt. And one evening, as we walked along the St. Petersburg waterfront, Diana told me she'd accepted the promotion. I smiled, pulling her close. "We'll figure it out," I said, because this time there were no masks, no secrets, just us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the water in gold, Diana kissed me. Slow, tender, certain. And I knew that no matter what storms lay ahead, I'd face them all as the real Bella, hand in hand with the woman who had taught me how to be brave enough to love.